What's up, YouTube? Drew here, and you're in my shop with this 2006 Hyundai Accent. This one's a mystery. Like most of our cars, I got it, I forget, either Baltimore or Richmond, Virginia. So those places don't have zero winter, but they have quite a bit less than the Northeast, where we are in Rochester, New York. This subframe is not up to par, as you see here, but the rest of the car is. There's the lines. There's the pinch welds. This is a perfectly rust-free car. Even if you look at this side of the subframe, there's nothing but a little surface rust. So the only thing I could think is the battery's right there. Perhaps they had a leaking battery in it and it got on there. I have no idea, but the car is perfect other than that. So what I wanted to show you is how to remove the subframe. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to leave the engine. I'm about 90% certain the motor mount that is on the top of the engine on the side with the harmonic balancer and the transmission mount that is up and supports the transmission on the top of the would-be frame rail, the unibody rail there. This mount and this mount I'm going to remove. I'm obviously not going to do it when I'm laying under it, but I'm about 98% certain at least that the engine will gladly and willingly hang from those other mounts without falling out. I'm not going to bet my life on that. So I'm probably going to support it from the top like a little bit, but I don't believe I need to bring out like an engine hoist or anything crazy like that. I could just do it from my ceiling. No big deal. So, excuse me, first thing that we have to address is getting off the steering rack. The other thing is the sway bar either needs to come off of the subframe or the end links need to be disconnected and the sway bar kind of flipped around to clear the rack, which is going to stay with the car as it comes down. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bosses, if you will. Those are like nuts welded to the bottom of the frame, and the bolt is on the top. So that one's pretty easy to get to. I heated these up. I have an inductor. That's so I don't have to use an open flame. You can, by all means, use a torch if you feel comfortable, but you're definitely going to have to heat these unless the thing is from, like, Nevada. Heat these, and then this one, like I said, is pretty easy to get to from the top. This is one that I wanted to show you. This specific wrench bends 180 degrees, and you've got enough room to come in here for the leverage. You have like 1 or 2 clicks maybe on the wrench to get it, and then but once you've got a couple of those clicks to get it loose, you could just essentially tough to do with one hand here, but there you go. You could just do this and get it the rest of the way out until it's finger loose, and then go from there. So this is probably going to be the most awful part, freeing up the steering rack. The rest of it's pretty darn accessible. I'm sure there's little things that are going to slow us down big time, like any of you who have ever done a sway bar link on a even remotely northern car know that that's not fun. So I'm just going to show you guys all the obstacles I run into and how to get past them as we go along. So again, the first one, probably the worst bolt in the job, is this one right here. If I'm wrong on that, I'll tell you when I get to a worse one. But I'm already in the green. It's just a matter of kind of doing this until you hear each click there, until it's finger loose and getting it out. So stay tuned, and we're going to get this bad boy out of here and replaced. Before you take that rack the rest of the way out, you are going to want to take, let me see if I can show you here. There are 2 bolts. These guys right here, they're 17s. They hold in the bottom of the ball joint, right? So see that right there? That connection, there's 2 on each side. And you're going to need to turn the steering wheel to do that. I have my negative battery terminal off. I have the key in the ignition turned all the way so I can move the, the steering back and forth. Do make sure that you don't have the rack and pinion bolts out, at least 2 of them, 1 on each side of the car, at least, a couple turns in, because to do this, you need to actuate, the rack. And if you do so without the bolts, then you'll damage the lines for sure, because it'll be the rack that, the outer part of the rack that moves, not the inner part, if that makes sense. So the other thing is, these are 14s on the sway bar links, and there's a 14 flat spot on the back of it, which is pretty nice. You got to use a skinny wrench. I couldn't use my thick Craftsman style. I had to use my cheapy little skinny ratchet ones. Get in the back, zip that off. The thing that's nice about doing that early in the job is it lets you move this guy around so that you can get around it in the back. And I'm going to try to drop the frame out with the sway bar on. So stay tuned. All right, so the right side rear one, that's the last one I'm on. It's right there. You can see it popping up. So it's by no means more difficult than the one that I showed you guys. The one that I showed you guys is out. The other two besides this one were super easy. The only thing that makes this one particularly challenging is that you bump into that line that's above it. So with the other one on the other side out and these two out, I just simply lifted the rack by the end, by the boot, and stuck a wrench under there to give myself a little bit more room, and that is out. The rack is ready to be suspended by the body of the car. Next, you've got to get off. There's a 12 millimeter holding on this guy, this guy, this guy, and that guy right there. So 1, 2, and 3 you're gonna get from down here. Again, this bendy wrench makes that really easy. This one you could get from down here, but it's much easier if you get it from there. So you just kind of push this back and it's right down in there. So once those are off, we're getting pretty darn close to being able to drop that frame. Right, next you've got these guys here, these like white colored bolts. There's 3, 1, 2, 3. You can see the spots where they came from. And then there's 1, 2, and 3 that hold on the front and rear motor mounts. You're going to want to take those off. So there's one final obstacle, and it's pretty straightforward. I don't think I have a video on these. They kind of suck. But just get the exhaust hanger off. You stick I use either a flat blade screwdriver or a pick to get, parallel with this and then kind of pry the rubber off. And then I wire tied my rack and pinion to the motor mount, which is staying in the car. The engine, I'm under it, and as you see here, it's not supported by the frame anymore, which is really sketchy. But with the exhaust disconnected and the rack supported, I'm ready to drop out the frame and hope for the best. So it's important to remember that this guy has to be like in this up position to clear that rack, and it kind of doesn't want to stay there, but we'll work with that as we go. Just gonna unzip the last bolt here and drop it down. All right, so that sucked a little bit more than I thought it would. I'm gonna see when I put everything back together if I could leave the back of the frame tipped down and confirm that there's access to the 4 bolts that hold on the sway bar bushing caps there, because that one, especially on that side, really hung up on the rack, and I had to kind of get under there and essentially like bench press the thing. I used like my knees on the back and kind of I rocked it down. It was not that bad. I mean, I was able to easily lift the new one myself. And all this has on it is the control arms, ball joints, and sway bar is in terms of extra weight compared to the replacement. So I knew I could handle it. I just got under there and kind of manhandled it down. It sucked. I'm a little bit too old for this crap. At least I think I am. But very doable. So just make sure to pay attention in the end of the video. I will give you a solid yes or no if you could get those out and leave the sway bar with the car. I still recommend you take the sway bar end links off. So I guess in theory, then the sway bar is just going to kind of be free to do its own thing. What it would end up doing in that case is hanging from the rack, which is doing a great job of just chilling in the car. I left the bolts in. I'm going to take those out when I put everything back together. And I'm definitely going to give you guys notes on reassembly, so be sure to stay tuned, okay? All right, so I don't know about you guys, but I'm really particular about fasteners. I'm not just going to grab something off the shelf to bolt in, the 4 bolts that essentially keep a tire from flying off a car. So what I wanted to show you guys is on the old setup, there's like these cages around the bolts. You can see it really well here. That one kind of exploded when I was trying to get it out. But there are square nuts, like, pardon my camera work here, there's square nuts inside these cages. So what I'm doing is I'm using my chisel and my brass hammer to get those out, because they quite clearly updated the design. You can see by the the marks on the new ones that there was a round hex nut there rather than these square 1940s style nuts in these cages. So just go ahead and bust apart the cages with a chisel if you want to, or at the very least get grade like you know, 12, the best, absolute best you can get if you're going to go aftermarket, or just go to Hyundai and buy them. But don't, you know, just grab some, you know, I got my nuts and bolts over there. Don't just, you know, grab, I'm sure, like a 3/4 inch or whatever, you know, grade 8. You're not doing that, because that's what holds, you know, the wheel from, like if you look on this car here, you know, that's what holds the wheel from doing that or that, you know what I mean? That it wouldn't fall off the car, but the person driving would absolutely completely lose control. So make sure to either reuse these like I am, or at the very least go with like grade 12, or best thing to do would be go to Hyundai if you don't do what I'm doing. Okay, so if you're like me, you don't have a lift, I don't even have heat. I have that salamander, but yeah, I have 4 awesome kids and a beautiful wife to provide for. So this is what I do. That is kind of like this random stepping stool. Came in the garage of my house. I use it to get to like my higher shelves and things. You can build something like that in like 30 seconds. I'm just using it to get this guy kind of positioned where it needs to go. And then I'm just going to muscle it back into place. And once I get at least 1 bolt in, and keep this underneath it, and then get another bolt in, you know, across it, everything should go smooth from there. All right, so this is working out really well, having that step stool or whatever it is. I got everything lined up front. Just be careful, check everything twice. This isn't, you know, an absolute step-by-step video. It's just to show you the basics of what you need. But there was some rubber washers with some steel washers. That's all in there, and this is hanging in the front. I just got to make sure everything's lined up in the back. I'm going to push it up from the outside in the car on one side and just get a bolt started. Then I'll pull out the stool and get under there, and I guess keep my lips pursed in case I drop it on my face. I don't lose any teeth, right? No fun without a lift, but you know, the other thing I don't have is a helper. So if there's anything that's difficult one-handed, I'll let you know. It was a little bit awkward to not hit the bottom of the rotor initially with the ball joint, but as you see, it worked out just fine. You know, I'm alone. I'm not a huge guy, and I don't have a lift, and I'm doing this. So if I can, you can. Yeah, stay tuned. Real quick tip on the back right rack bolt. If you take off the 10 millimeter that holds this line clamp down, you can get a long and a deep 17 millimeter socket between the 2 lines, and have at that, let me zoom out for you here, have at the back right side bolt there. Much easier than trying to do it with a wrench. So once you've got the rack screwed in, I would recommend leaving these all kind of a little loose until you get them all in, and then torque them down. These guys, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those are the motor mount bolts. Do the same thing with those. And this guy, the heat shield slides back on with the 312s. Pretty easy there. Just make sure when you put on the 12s that hold this one, and then the 4th one is right up there. Remember that one that you have to get from the outside, or you should get from the outside? Do that one last, because you can actually pop it up out of the way to make it easier to do this one. So, you know, of course, again, this isn't a 100% step-by-step, nut-by-nut, bolt-by-bolt video, but it should, you know, if you followed this far, you should, if I missed anything in my notes, sorry, but you should remember it and be able to do it. The last thing I just got to do is put the sway bar end links back on and triple check my work, and this job is done, believe it or not. Okay, so we've got a subframe installed. Just to go over real quick everything that's part of this job, you've got 1, 2, 3 bolts for this motor mount, 1, 2, 3 bolts for this motor mount, your 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts for your steering rack. The sway bar bolts are on the top at the very ends. Of course, you've got your sway bar link end bolts, your ball joint bolts. The control arms were moved on with their 2 bolts each when the frame was off the car. You've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 bolts that hold your steering lines on. 1, 2, 3 bolts that hold on your heat shield. You've got your rubber nubby suspending your exhaust on both sides here. And of course, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 19s holding on the frame itself. Make sure everything is torqued to spec. good and tight so nothing comes undone when you're driving, as you might kill yourself or somebody else if that happens. You do have a splash shield under here. I'm not going to show that. That should be pretty self-explanatory. But the gist of it is I did this without a lift. It took, I don't know, maybe 4 hours. If I could do it, you could do it. And, watch this video a couple times just to see exactly what you're up against so you know going in. That way you're not holding your phone under the car and trying to study as you potentially drop stuff on yourself. This is dangerous. You're doing so at your own risk. My video is just merely to entertain you guys, and if you find useful information, then you find useful information. It's certainly not in any way directional or educational, just entertainment's sake. And of course, if it was helpful, I do ask that you give the video a thumbs up. That tells the internet that it's good, and it helps other people see it, which of course helps them. And if you like my style, which would mean the world to me, and if you don't, that's okay too, but if you like the style of this video, subscribe, because there's tons of quick tips, walkarounds, how-tos, shortcuts that don't sacrifice quality, hybrid, JDM, and classic American content as well. And I just might put a link in the description at some point to, do a small donation, as, these videos are a lot of work. They don't really pay me anything, and they save you guys a ton. So if any of that stuff is on your heart to do, please do it. And hey, remember, if I could do it, you could do it. God bless you. Hang in there and take care. Goodbye.